Okay, so let's dive right into what can be a really complex and honestly a pretty confusing topic. If you have a member of the LDS Church and a traditional Christian, and they both say they believe in Jesus, are they actually talking about the same person?
You know, on the surface, it sure sounds like it. They both use words we all recognize: Jesus, God, grace, salvation. But here's the thing, and it's what we're going to unpack today. They're often using the very same words but are pulling from completely different dictionaries. The meanings behind them can be fundamentally different.
So that's our central question, right? To get to the bottom of it, let's unpack the core doctrines from both perspectives. We'll put them side by side and see where they actually line up and where they really start to diverge.
Now, to really understand the differences in who Jesus is, we actually have to start with the definition of God the Father. It might sound a little backward, but this is the foundation. Everything else is built on top of this one idea.
Okay, so right off the bat, we see a really immediate and, well, a pretty stark contrast. The biblical view holds that God is and has always been an eternal, uncreated spirit. But in LDS theology, God the Father is understood as an exalted man, a man with a physical body of flesh and bone. And believe me, this distinction is absolutely crucial.
This quote here from a former LDS president, Lorenzo Snow, really captures a foundational teaching in Mormonism. It's this idea that God the Father wasn't always God. Instead, he achieved that status through a process of progression.
And that leads us to this key doctrine called eternal progression. It basically teaches that the path to godhood isn't unique to God the Father. It's a path that worthy humans can follow too. And this single idea, it radically reframes the entire purpose of our existence and, of course, the identity of Jesus Christ.
Okay, so let's move on and see how this foundational belief builds a very different picture of who Jesus is. I mean, if God the Father was once a man who became a God, what in the world does that mean for Jesus?
And wow, this table just lays it all out, doesn't it? The biblical view presents Jesus as unique, the uncreated, eternal God who made everything. In the LDS view, Jesus is the firstborn spirit child of heavenly parents. This actually makes him the spirit brother of all other spirit children, including Lucifer. He wasn't eternally God, he progressed to godhood.
So, this process of achieving godhood through perfect obedience, it has a name: exaltation. In LDS theology, this is the path that Jesus followed, and it's presented as the exact same path that others can follow to achieve the exact same status.
Well, this naturally brings up a pretty critical question about the whole purpose of salvation. What's the end game? What is the ultimate goal for a faithful person in each of these belief systems?
And here again, we see two fundamentally different destinations. In biblical Christianity, the goal is to be reconciled to God, to live in fellowship with Him. In Mormonism, the ultimate goal of exaltation is to become a God, just like God the Father, and then to create and rule over your own worlds.
So how does someone achieve that final goal? This brings us to the concept of grace and how it's understood in each system. The difference is often illustrated as the difference between a ladder and a rope.
And this difference, it really comes down to the source texts themselves. The Bible, for instance, says salvation is a gift, explicitly not a result of works. The Book of Mormon also talks about being saved by grace, but it adds this crucial, defining phrase, "after all we can do." That small phrase completely changes the meaning of grace.
So this is the ladder analogy. In this view, grace is Jesus giving you the ladder. I mean, without it, you can't get to heaven, period. But you, through your own effort, your obedience, your ordinances, and your good works, you're the one who has to do all the climbing.
Now, this is the rope analogy. Here, you're at the bottom of a deep pit, totally unable to save yourself. Grace is God lowering a rope, tying it around you, and doing all the work of pulling you to safety. He isn't just giving you the tools to save yourself, He's doing the saving.
So what does this actually mean for a believer's confidence? I mean, if your salvation depends on you climbing a ladder, how do you ever know if you've climbed high enough? This often leads to a hope, but not a certainty. But if it's a rope, your assurance rests completely on the one pulling the rope, not on you. All right, let's pull all of this together and just look at the foundational differences we've covered one more time. Because as we've seen, these definitions, they really, really do matter.
As this table just makes crystal clear, from the very nature of God the Father, to the identity of Jesus, to the ultimate goal for humanity and the means of salvation, the exact same terms point to profoundly different realities.
This analogy just crystallizes the whole issue perfectly. You could say you know a guy named John, and someone else can say, oh, I know a John too. But if their John is a different age, has a different job, and a whole different family, they're not talking about your John. They are, by definition, different people, even if they happen to share the same name.
And that really leaves us with the final question. When the definitions of Jesus' eternal nature, his relationship to God the Father, and his work of salvation are so fundamentally different, can we truly say we're talking about the same person? That's the question at the very heart of this entire discussion.